There's multiple mistakes I've made over the years, and today I want to share 5 financial mistakes I've made over the last 10 years, as well as what I've learned from them. This is a from the heart type of video, and I hope you can avoid these mistakes as well as take the lessons learned and implement them into your journey as you see fit. The first one's going to be not understanding the true value of time versus money. There were times I would look purely at the dollar amount and nothing else mattered, period. Many years ago when Uber was just first coming out, there was a choice for me to make of whether to choose Uber, which was 25 cents more than public transport, or take public transport, where the whole duration of the total journey would be 1 whole hour more, assuming everything went on schedule. Choosing the cheaper option initially made me proud, yet after the fact, I knew that I would never do it again, given what I could have done with that extra time. More importantly, the physical energy that was spent could have literally been used anywhere else. There's a saying that when you're born, you may have no money, yet you have all the energy and all the time. And as your age progresses, you may accumulate more money, yet your energy and time diminishes. That experience taught me that although I was willing to spend the time and the energy, I could have also spent the money to save that same time and energy, such that looking at the holistic picture is supremely important versus from purely one lens. Number 2 is wishing I started investing earlier. This is probably a common one for many, given that you have time on your side, where if you're long-term investing, the effect of compounding is that much more exponential when you have that much more time. Investing earlier would have meant that I would have been dabbling that much more into everything investing versus thinking that investing was purely involving the stock market. And through learning about these other investment vehicles would have also allowed me to understand how each and every type of investments work, because they're not all the same. I bought my first house at 23 years old, and what I learned is that it's not about doing the thing, it's about now the fact that I have this 30-year mortgage, in other words, payments that need to be made each and every period till the end of that term of the loan. Apart from a monthly payment for the next 30 years, even though it could be paid off faster, let's say it was paid off in full. What I didn't know at the time is that there's something known as property taxes and HOA fees. Property taxes are based on your property value, which is assessed by your county. In other words, it's kind of out of your hand, and so these property taxes can change drastically year over year. A homeowners association fee, also known as an HOA, can also change dramatically just depending on whoever's deciding what type of revamps or upgrades or whatever cost they want to justify within your community. Like this, even if you have a paid off home, you'll have to pay property taxes and HOA in perpetuity. This may be table stakes where maybe everyone knew this, yet at the time I really didn't know what I was getting into, and more importantly, I didn't know how to combat these costs. In other words, items like rent hacking, or maybe having an extra unit which you could rent out, and this was before Airbnb was really a thing and normalized, so that maybe you have a roommate, maybe you have 2 roommates, maybe you have a multi-family unit where you live in one unit and there are multiple others, so they're paying for the mortgage at least partially, or at least you're breaking even. In other words, you're renting and living for free, or maybe you're making some cash flow, aka profit. Today, I'm multi-fold up on the investment. Sounds like great news, yet if I had the same level of knowledge, I could have easily bought at the top and then ride that asset price as it goes down, yet have those same monthly payments in the same amount for that 30-year period. On the flip side, let's say the price skyrocketed up. I wouldn't be able to execute upon strategies and techniques to leverage that situation, such as cash out refinancing and doing a next move, or taking any which action, because I would just be in that moment maybe feeling, oh, on paper I'm up, and I'm up, but there would be no next step. The third one is, do I want this thing that society wants me to have? When I was in a collegiate environment, it was super normalized to wear polos and Sperry's. Regardless of being in a fraternity or not, it was kind of similar to how maybe even longer ago, it was normalized to wear Abercrombie or Aeropostale, Hollister, those type of brands. At the time, my mindset was quite frugal. It wasn't in the making money mindset, but it definitely was in the saving money mindset. This meant that buying a new polo for $60 each and the expectation to have multiple colors, it was just something I couldn't wrap my head around. Because of this, there was a Salvation Army similar to a Goodwill, which was near the college campus. And on Wednesdays, they would get new inventory. And because of that, on Tuesdays, the day prior, they would give 25 to 50% off all clothing. I used to go on Tuesdays and look for polos, and whether they were torn, stained, or not even the right size, I would buy them such that I could have these polos. After a year of doing this, I realized that not only did no one really care, but it was pretty straightforward. It's either you're in or you're out. And what this meant from the outside looking in, I was like, okay, well, if everyone looks quite similar, then even if I were to join, I'm one of many. And if you look at it from a holistic picture, I'm basically the mean or the average, which meant there's not an outlier, or in other words, what's so special about anyone in particular. So from saving mental space and mental energy for catching up with the Joneses equivalent in this regard, at the same time, it allowed me to think on my own and think for myself and think, what did I really want? Essentially, versus following the crowd and following trends, how do I pave my own way? The lesson I learned from this point is not to hold yourself back to match society. If I was listening to the majority of folks that I was surrounding myself around, I would never have even continued to make videos on this channel. Many of them question why I'm even making these type of videos, yet for me, I wish I had these type of videos back in the day such that I could learn that much faster and avoid the same mistakes. What I learned is there's a community out there, and it may take some time to find it, yet at the same time, you can grow, thrive, ideate, whatever you think, you can achieve it. And there's folks that think very similarly, and the limit, whether it's the sky, the moon, the universe, the galaxies, it's as far as you want to take it, and there's literally no one stopping you other than yourself. Don't let anyone stop you if you believe in something, because from what you believe, it's just creating those actionable steps and then executing upon them, and you'll get literally where you're thinking of getting. Moving on from there, buying the same low quality items repeatedly. Whether it was buying cheap lead for my mechanical pencil where it would break if I put just too much pressure on the paper, to cheap tools such as screwdrivers and hammers where they would break if you put just too much force in a certain direction, and to buying cheaper vehicles where even if you put so many dollars into thinking you've solved the problem once and for all, there's just not a guarantee, and it would just drain you mentally, physically, and maybe there's anxiety and stress if you got to get from point A to point B and your car can't do the one thing, even if it was just meant to go from point A to point B reliably. Essentially, spend a little more if it's a higher quality item, which may last longer, do the thing it's meant to do, and then save you time, not just for yourself, but for others around you, especially when it comes to cars, is what I'm getting at. Finally, not planning and not balancing the execution. From a planning perspective, back in the day, I used to say, I want a lot of money. How much money, if you asked me? I wouldn't know, but I knew I wanted a lot of money. Just for example, let's say at the time, $5 million was considered a lot of money. Now, if I'm working a job, let's say $70,000 a year, and after taxes, I'm keeping, let's say, 50,000 of that, simple math says, hey, 50K post-tax dollars times 100 years is $5 million gross. In other words, if you're saving 100% of your income and you were working for 100 years, only then would you have $5 million cash without investing in any which way. This sounds so simple, yet back then I would think about this end outcome, yet have no play-by-play for how I would actually get there. That's in the planning way, and balancing the execution is essentially saying that, let's say there's a job that's paying $10 an hour, and let's say the maximum that's ever paid for that role and will ever be paid is 20% more than that entry amount. In other words, that $10 an hour would mean that the maximum is $12 an hour. Hence, if you're gonna spend triple the energy or put in 3 times the effort, your maximum at maximum is gonna be 20% gained. It comes down to demand versus supply, where when you see an excess supply of a certain type of labor force, there may be not as much of a market price or value given to that skill set. There's a stereotypical example where anybody can flip a burger. And because that's the case, that's usually at that minimum wage because anybody can do that at minimum. Because of this, as the skill set is more rare, more unique, and there's more value that's provided from that skill, usually the market values it higher such that wages are higher. And so understanding that demand versus supply predicament is supremely important to understand the flow of money. Not having this understanding back in the day meant that I really thought that working harder really meant that something would happen. Now, what would happen? I don't know. But I genuinely was like, I'm working harder, there must be results that will be shown, and something will happen. I used to think that spending time for money was exactly and the only way that worked. Hence, spending more time, you make more money. When I learned that spending time wasn't the only way to make money, I learned 2 things. I learned that you can make money in a one-to-one relationship manner, where let's say there's the government, or let's say a trillionaire, just an example, that they value you in such a high regard that as long as they value for that X amount, essentially your market value is given by that purchaser. The other is the one-to-many relationship where, for example, a famous actress or actor, famous celebrity, they may provide value to the masses. In other words, there's this scalable nature where it's not just a one-time event or a one-time speech. It could be a speech that's recorded, or this YouTube video that reaches the masses, and this is a scalable piece of content which may provide revenue not just today but maybe later on as well. And of course it can be a mix of the three, where someone hires me, let's say for a public speaking engagement. That's maybe a one-off situation where someone values that instance of me being present in that moment. It's essentially for my time, but it's in a manner where I'm not, let's say, billing, where maybe I'm a consultant for 100 hours at X amount per hour, then I'm getting that stream of revenue. And then maybe that same public speaking engagement is recorded and there's an agreement where, let's say, there's royalties given to myself in a passive nature in the long term. So right out of that whole situation, there's 3 streams of quote unquote revenue from the same skill set. I want to add one last point which would have helped me supremely if I just really thought even more outside of the box. If you look at the inception of money, where it started off with the barter system, where maybe I'm trading my 1 cow for your 2 sheep, and then fast forward, instead of trading one thing for another, we had a medium of exchange. For example, let's say gold, silver, copper, and items like this. And then one fine day when they got way too heavy, we started creating paper money. And I'm fast forwarding a little, but basically you have your dollar bills, and then fast forward a little more, you have cryptocurrency, and now the digital currency. So what I'm trying to get at this is that I never really connected one and one, that money is essentially made up. I didn't know how it was all connected. From what role does the government play if there's a real estate collapse? What happens if the stock market crashes? What is a Fed bailout? How do interest rates really play a part in the overall economy? Knowing a lot more now, I'm able to say, okay, if I'm going to invest, there's a reason why you may not want all your eggs in one basket, not just in the stock market diversified portfolio way, but as an overall portfolio. You may want to hedge, you may want to double down in a certain industry if you think that maybe certain regulations may go a certain way, or you just think the long-term expectation of other type of industries with subsidies from the government may go in a different direction. And so there's different ways to execute and take specific actions, not just for today, but for literally the rest of your life. And then depending how you want to structure your portfolio, if there's next steps when it comes to taxes, for example, with your next of kin or the next generation, etc. If you came this far, I appreciate you. I think it's going to be a longer video than not. I stopped budgeting recently. Check this video out here of why. And with that, thanks again. See you in the next one. Peace.